back in like 2020, yeah, like 2020, 2021-ish, I got really into watching old horror and science fiction movies from like the 50s through 70s, because I really like pulp science fiction stuff and old horror stuff, and I think I think it's fun. I always like that. I got back in my, yeah, right behind me. I have a magazine. Those, like, what were those called? I can't remember. The cover's like, it's so old. Like these old monster horror magazines. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was like a commemorative thing, or not commemorative. It was like an annual monster magazine. Is it Monster Mash? Classic Monsters, something like that. It's really old with like all the, it's basically falling apart, and I think I got it from a friend of mine back, oh my god, back in kindergarten. I visited him, and like in his basement, he was like, "Hey, we got this thing, you want it?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's cool, that's awesome." And it's got like, I haven't flipped through it in forever. Oh, you know that famous interview, that famous disaster interview with that guy? Hang on, what is it? I remember the band was called the Box Boys. Interview. Where's the man? Where's the man? How long do I want to look for this? I'm gonna pause this so I can look this up. Found it. I just spent like 10 minutes searching for this stupid interview. It's Billy Bob Thornton on QTV. Look up Billy Bob Thornton blow up on QTV. It's like a 20-minute interview. Hilarious. One of the most awful interviews you'll ever see, and not on the interviewer, just on the interviewee being fucking insane. And he's just immediately completely uncooperative. It's almost like he's on something. It's like he's on some kind of drug. I don't know what, but something. And he's just decided to be fucking pissed off the entire time and tank the whole interview. It was for his band, the Box Masters, not the Box Boys, the Box Masters. And he just starts rambling on about, the interviewer asked him like if he was into music when he was a kid, like if he played an instrument as a kid, and just a really simple question, and Thornton just starts talking about a contest he entered for the magazine Famous Monsters of Filmland, which I believe is the one I have back there. Anyway, I got really into watching those because a lot of them are public domain. A lot of these old movies are public domain, or very easy to find online. And then they kind of got cut short. A lot of hobbies that I was doing kind of got short and got cut short. Well, I don't know why that's hard to say. Got cut short for me in 2021 because I had a bunch of anxiety problems. And I don't remember what it was, but I was watching I watched Red Letter Media's review on Mars Attacks, and I was like, oh man, I really like this old pulpy sci-fi aesthetic. Let me go check out, because on my I made an IMDb account when I was really into watching these films, and I had a big list, and I was like, why don't I maybe check one of these out. So I just looked at like the next one that I had up. Excuse me. The next one that I hadn't watched on my list, which is a horror film from 1977 called The Sentinel, which was adapted from a book of the same name. The Sentinel is a weird movie. It feels like a pretty interesting book that is adapted very poorly. So here's the basic premise of The Sentinel, and I'm actually going to not go into the basic premise. I'm actually going to go into the whole movie, because it's not like too complicated. Well, it sort of is. I'm just going to spoil it, because you're not going to go watch it. Go watch it right now after I give the basic premise. Or don't, because it's not like the best thing ever. The Sentinel is about this woman. She's played by Christina Rains. There's a bunch of like random famous actors in this movie. They've got let's pull up the cast. Christina Rains is the main character. They got Chris Sarandon, Ava Gardner, Martin Balsam, John Carradine, Jose Ferrer, Arthur Kennedy, Burgess Meredith, Sylvia Miles. Who else do I recognize? Beverly D'Angelo. And then also random, again, 1977, the first appearance of Tom Berenger, the first on-screen appearance of Tom Berenger, a young Christopher Walken, and a young Jeff Goldblum. He just shows up in one scene, and I was like, is that Jeff Goldblum? And he plays like a minor character in the film. And none of these people have anything to do in this movie. They hardly do anything. Most of them, at least. Burgess Meredith is pretty delightful. So the idea is that she is shopping. They live in New York. She and her, Christina Rains and her boyfriend, they live in New York. Her boyfriend is an attorney, I believe. And they're apartment hunting. When the movie opens, they're apartment hunting separately. Well, you're only seeing them do it separately. And as you kind of learn, he's shopping for them, and she is shopping for herself. She's kind of thinking about maybe getting a place on her own and not living together with him. I'm not sure if there's more detail about it in the book, but at least in the film they make it seem as if there's no serious problems in their relationship. She just kind of wants a little more. She just wants a little space to herself. She's like, okay, and they make it pretty clear, at least, that they are still pretty late. They're still in love with each other. He wants to get married. She is a little hesitant, you know. So they're apartment hunting and all this, is kind of gets interrupted when she gets a call. She gets news that her father has died. So she goes back to her family's estate for the funeral, and she's walking around the house. This big mansion out in the countryside, and she's walking around the house. She's on the top floor. She goes out to the balcony, and she looks down at like the front of the house, and she kind of just, it's so weird. I didn't understand what was happening at first. She's having like a flashback. I can totally see this happening in a book. I can see this happening being a lot clearer in a book, but in the film it's like a weird shift from literalism to a little like abstract, because she basically sees herself as like a teenager. It's still her playing. It's the same actress, so the age is like they just kind of make her hair longer. She's just wearing like a longer wig. I guess she's supposed to be like a teenager in this flashback where she's like seeing herself down on the street, like coming home. She's getting dropped off with some from like her friends are dropping her off or something, and then she sees herself coming up the stairs and then walking down the hall and knocking on her father's bedroom door, and she's like, "Dad, I'm home from school," and then he doesn't answer, so she opens the door, and her elderly father is having a cake sex orgy on his bed. I guess cheating on her mom, because she goes, "How are these women?" It's like he's with these two fat naked women, and they're shoving cake into each other's mouths on this bed. And so Christina Rain is freaking out. She's like, "What the fuck is that?" Her father gets up, and he just like, get the fuck out of here. And he like, she's wearing a crucifix necklace, and he like rips it off for some reason. She runs to the bathroom and pulls out a razor blade and starts going to town. And I was, what the fuck? What the fuck is happening? This happens in the span of like 30 seconds. It's really out there. It's oh my god, it's like really, and they show it on screen and everything, and I was like, what the fuck? This is a little odd and random. It comes up later in the film. It feels again like something that's kind of lost in adaptation. This film has a lot of that. The way it's edited is a little herky-jerky. There'll be scenes where I could imagine, like, because the start of the movie, okay, so basically, after that, she is having dinner, after she has this flashback up to this traumatic event from her childhood. She's having dinner with her mom after the funeral, and she asks her mom why she put up with her father being such a piece of shit, and her mom says, well, I just didn't have anywhere else I could go. And this really strikes her, and you can tell it affects her a lot, because the next thing that happens is she basically tells her boyfriend that she is resolved to getting her own place. And he says, oh, so you're really committed to that then? And she says, well, I just don't want, I don't want to be left with nowhere to go. And he's just like, oh, that sounds dramatic. What the... And she never tells him the story. She never tells him what happened. This is just kind of an internal thing for her. But this was a very affecting experience and conversation she had, where she wants to be on her own. She wants to be independent. She's worried about being tied down to someone. She's she has a job as a model. That's her thing. She's a model. She does like TV commercials and stuff. And that's when you see Jeff Goldblum, because he's like the photographer that she works with frequently, and he's just kind of there. Also, every single line he has is ADR'd. Every single line. This movie has some bad ADR. Like, you can tell the mic setup was fucked up. Like, they didn't block it properly. Apparently, everyone hated the director on this production, and just little things like that are like, yeah, it seems like he had a very chaotic, kind of unplanned, messy directing style, because from line to line, it will change from the actual recorded audio to ADR, where it's like clearly someone dubbing over in post, and it's extremely noticeable. Even on, I watched a copy that was on archive.org, which it's kind of a crappy VHS rip. It's fine. It's got a little bit of hum, a little distortion at a few parts, but it was overall pretty okay. But even there, you could tell, like, oh yeah, this was not what they recorded initially. It is a completely different sound. Not really any care to making it sound like it's actually in the room. Like, there's no echo. It's such an amateur thing. And yeah, Jeff Goldblum, like, all of his lines are ADR'd. It's extremely noticeable with everyone. It's constant throughout the film. And you can always tell, because it's when a character is facing a little bit away from the camera, and you can tell, oh, they didn't have the microphone set up so that it could pick it up when they turned around. Oh, man. Anyway, so she finds this real estate agent who starts showing her around some apartments, and she gets this apartment that overlooks I don't know what river it is. It's through New York. I guess the Hudson? It overlooks the river. It's this brown brick building, and she decides to move into here. Very interesting, kind of cool looking apartment complex, actually. In the interior, which was actually all the interior stuff inside the apartment is the same building. It's the exact same building, so that's kind of neat. It's the exterior and interior. It was all just a really cool location that they found. And once she enters this apartment, strange things begin to happen. There's an old man, an old priest on the very top floor, who spends all of his days looking out the window, even though he's blind, just all day observing the Sentinel. You might infer is who he is from the title. She has these strange neighbors, and and things keep getting weirder. That's the basic synopsis. If that sounds interesting to you, you can go look it up right now. Watch it for free on archive.org. The Sentinel from 1977. And also, I guess that VHS copy is the uncensored version. This movie has a lot of Catholic stuff in it, and also nudity. and all of that was only really shown in the theatrical release and the much later DVD Blu-ray releases, and I think a couple VHS copies. But for when it had to be re-edited for TV, where they had to cut out a lot of stuff like that. They had to cut out a lot of the stuff with the church and the nudity, which, from what I can tell, just like, spitballing it in my mind, would make the movie extremely hard to follow. Those scenes are actually very important to the plot. So here's what's going on in the apartment. She's got these weird neighbors. She's got Burgess Meredith coming down. He has this cat and a bird, and he's very eccentric. She goes down to the first floor, and there's these lesbians living there. They are only ever referred to as the lesbians, just by any other character throughout the film. The lesbians. And that's Beverly D'Angelo and Sylvia Miles. And they are just weird, and she sits down at their apartment to have like some tea, and and they come out and they're just kind of weird, and Beverly D'Angelo doesn't say anything. She doesn't speak. She never speaks. She's a mute. And then Sylvia Miles leaves, and Beverly D'Angelo just starts masturbating in front of Christine Raids. And she's like, what the fuck is going on here? And she goes through the whole thing. She goes through the whole, the whole 9 yards. Right in front of her. And Christina Raids is just sitting there really uncomfortable the whole time. And then Sylvia Miles gets back, and she's like, and Christina Raids is like, so, what do you two do? And she goes, we fondle each other. And Christina Raids is like, well, okay, I gotta get going. And she just picks up her groceries and leaves. It's hilarious. It's so weird. It's so weird. They have this weird, very uncomfortable birthday party scene. You can look that up, I think, on YouTube. Like, she attends, like, a weird birthday party for a cat. And there's all these strange kind of people there who used to live in the building, or they do live in the building and all that, and just kind of these weird people, and it's a very uncomfortable scene that she has nightmares about later on, this weird, like, psychosexual nightmare about this birthday party. So she goes and talks to the real estate agent, and she's like, well, I have all these weird neighbors, and just, oh, and the other thing, she wakes up in the middle of the night, and there's despite the fact that no one lives in the apartment above her, she's hearing stomping and the rattling and scraping of the metal, and she really freaks her out. So she goes, what the okay. So she goes to the real estate agent. She's like, what? She's just telling her about all this weird stuff and all these neighbors she has. And her neighbor, the real estate agent, is like, what are you talking about? No one lives in that apartment complex except for you and the priest. And she's like, wow. And that's the point where the movie starts to get pretty interesting. Around like the 30-40 minute mark. Because this plot thread is really interesting. Like, what the fuck is going on in this apartment? Because she goes back with the agent, and she goes into these apartments which she's been in before, and they were like fully furnished and lived in and all that. And now, as soon as she goes back to them with her, they're these decrepit, like, obviously abandoned, covered in cobwebs, totally, all the furniture's, most of the furniture's been removed. There's just some stuff left behind and completely abandoned, right? And the agent is like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, okay, something fucking weird is going on. So she's asleep one night. She wakes up because she hears the stomping from upstairs again. And this is a pretty good scene. Okay. The soundtrack in this movie can be really bad. It's really weird and out of place feeling. It's like strangely strangely grand and triumphant in scenes that should not be, like, that are just very normal and typical. It's really weird. But during the spooky scenes, there's some pretty good soundtrack, I think. A little cheesy, but I like that. And she gets up, and this is like a legitimately pretty good horror scene. I feel like a classic horror scene in an otherwise sort of sloppily executed film in a lot of ways. She gets up, she's just in her like sexy little nightgown with like the fucking one of the straps hanging down. She just takes a knife and a flashlight, which is great, and she decides to start walking up. She's gonna go investigate. She's gonna go into that apartment, and it's pretty creepy. It's all dark and scary, and the soundtrack is like decently atmospheric. And she's going up, and she's walking up the stairs, and suddenly she sees Burgess Meredith's cat. The cat, and it's like eating the bird, and it's like hissing at her, and it's kind of freaky. It's pretty spooky. It's a freaky little scene. The cat runs off with the bird, and she goes to the apartment. She opens the door, and she's walking through. You're like, oh, fuck. Oh, God. It's like, the tension's great. The build-up is fantastic. And she's walking through. She walks, like through a hallway, like, through a curtain. And then she's like, she hears like this sound coming from down the hallway from behind her after she's like entered into the next room, and she like hides behind the door, and you just see this fucking weird, ghostly pale figure like walking quickly, like quick stepping through the room, and it's what the fuck, and it like spooks her, and she, for some fucking reason, she decides to like investigate further, and it's her father. It's like her corpse father, like he's dead, like a zombie or something, and she like stabs him. And she like stabs him and fucking cuts his nose off, and she's all covered in blood. She runs out. She goes to the phone booth that's outside the apartment building, and then she like calls the hospital, and she's in the hospital for a few days. So after she got the apartment, she's been having these little weird health things. Like, she's been fainting. She's just kind of out of it. There's a scene where they're trying to film a commercial, and she just keeps fucking it up in like a really minor way. Like, they just need her to like set the bottle down for the wine they're promoting, like, so that it's facing, the label's facing the camera. But you can't do that right. And he's like, everyone's like, what is up with her? And then she like has a full-on faint, and she's having all these health problems. And now she shows up to the hospital. She's completely delirious. She's covered in blood, which they later discover is her own blood. There's a little connection. It's her own blood. She's saying that she stabbed her father. She doesn't... Everyone's like, what the fuck is going on with Christina Rains? And then the film after this kind of... it hits this kind of... that's a high point of the movie. And then it hits this sort of like odd bit where they're trying... Okay, when I say that this movie has some issues in adaptation, there's some things that to me seem pretty clear. Like, the way it's edited, especially in the first act of the film, there's a lot of ground to cover. You got to establish, them apartment hunting, the relationship between them, her job. You got to do this whole sequence with her the funeral and all that, and then her getting the apartment. And it's actually like a lot of plot stuff to cover. And I can imagine in a book that could be covered pretty efficiently. There's transitions in this film that are very awkward, that are very like sudden, and you really have to fill in the gaps in between. Excuse me. And I can imagine that in a book being smoothed over with some internal narration or external narration, just something. The things that writing a book offers you, that you can just kind of say, we've been apartment hunting for, a few months, and then you can just cover that. In a film, you got to show that. You have to find a way to show that visually, or you got to work it into dialogue somehow. And that's one way that writing a book is easier than making a film, I guess. Or it's one advantage you have. There's other things where, like, I don't know if the book drags a little bit at the same point, but in the movie at least, they have to establish, so the mystery is what the hell is going on in this apartment complex. Is she seeing things? You know, is she crazy? Is there something supernatural? Is it even something else? And there's also a number of red herrings that they have to establish with other characters. Like, they have to establish this thing with the husband, or sorry, not the husband, the boyfriend. That, oh, he has this kind of suspicious history of all of his, he has like 2 former wives and they both committed suicide or something like that. He's got a bit of a bad omen about him. And this whole, like, the police chief suspects him of you know, being a shady guy, and the police chief's assistant is Christopher Walken, who plays a character named Rizzo. Christopher Walken plays a character named, like, Detective Rizzo, which I can't believe is real. He's the Rizzler. And Christopher Walken, just, there's a lot of time spent establishing the suspiciousness of the boyfriend, and you're like, if they've got this much going, like, is this going to amount to anything, or is this just meant to, like, be a red herring? And Christopher Walken, it just kind of stands there. It's bizarre. He just stands there. Who's the police chief? Eli Wallach, Detective Gats. His name is Gats. Gats and Rizzo? Come on. They just kind of, like, he just stands there, like, he doesn't say anything, and it's super weird because they keep cutting to his reaction shots like he's going to do something, and then he never does. He never becomes important in the plot. He has maybe 2 lines, and I'm pretty sure one of them is it's really strange. Yeah, the movie really drags at this sort of 3/4 mark, or like around the midway during the second act. And then it kind of gets interesting again. Christina Rains, she gets, you know, she starts going to, she starts going to church, and she's approached by this kind of creepy, you know, ominous feeling kind of priest who tells her to, like, you know, embrace Christ and all that, and you're like, huh, what's going on there? The boyfriend starts investigating the, who's the boyfriend played by? Yeah, Chris Sarandon, that's him. He starts investigating, like, the all the people connected to the apartment, and that's pretty neat. That's interesting stuff. So, like, he goes to the church because he's curious about this priest guy. Eventually, it culminates in him breaking into, hiring a guy that he knows. It's kind of like to set up that he's a little shady, or just like one of these details that the boyfriend's a little shady. He knows, like, a professional lock picker. They go to the apartment they go to the church. They go to, like, the church offices, like the archdiocese offices or something, and break in, and then he, like, looks through all the files and discovers something really strange. He finds that that same apartment in that same building has been occupied consistently by, like, religious priests or nuns for like 100 years or something like that, and or 200 years, something like that. Every single time one of them dies, they're replaced by another one, and then in those the replacements files, every single one of them was living a relatively ordinary life before they decided to randomly drop everything and become a nun or a priest. And then they started living in this apartment, and then would later die by suicide, and only to be replaced by the next one. And that's like, that's fucking weird. And you're sort of starting to get a picture for what's going on. That there's a connection between Christina Rains and this priest, and that there might be, you know, there might be a thing that's going to happen between them. Also, all of the people who Christina Rains finds out lives there have apparently died. They're all, like, dead and also murderers, like criminals, murderous, horrible criminals while they were living. So she was interacting with, like, their ghosts or something is all I can tell. And no one else ever met these people. It's just her, which is part of the, like, oh, is she crazy kind of part? Although you know that's not going to be what it is. You know it's not going to be that she's insane. They just have to set it up so no one can believe her. So the boyfriend is like, what the? Oh, shit. Oh, God. And he, like, puts together this pattern to figure out when the priest is going to die, which is going to be when Christina Rains is going to succeed him as the Sentinel. So that kicks off the climax of the film, which is where he gets one of her friends to, like, watch over her until midnight. He needs her to just stay away from the apartment until the day is over, so they can break the chain, and she won't be like taken in by whatever this sort of ritual is. He goes to the apartment with, like, a gun, and he confronts the priest, ends up trying to strangle him, gets smacked in the head by someone else who's off camera. Christina Rains passes out at a party. They're like, oh my God, put her to bed. Turns out that randomly the bedroom that they put her in has a door that just leads to, like, the maintenance shaft, like the maintenance stairs of the building for some reason. Not even like a fire escape or something, just like the straight up, like the whole staircase. She goes back to the apartment. And once she's in the apartment, so it turns out the boyfriend, before he got whacked, he finds this thing in a wall. He rips like part of the wall off, and it's like, beware all ye who enter, or something like that. And he basically finds out that the apartment it's built over the entrance to hell. It's built over the entrance to hell. And Christina Rains she's been picked to be the next in line to succeed the priest, who is that's John Carradine, by the way. She's gonna succeed him as the next Sentinel to watch over, basically guard the entrance to hell. And that's why all of these strange people live in this building, as they're actually like the spirits. They're the demonic remnants of those people. So Christina Rains, she's like walking around, she's like going, I don't know, she's just compelled to go up to like the top floor to where the priest was, and she gets like almost there. I forgot what happens. Oh, so the evil spirits are trying to get her to kill herself so that she breaks the cycle. They're trying to torture her into suicide. And this begins a pretty freaky sequence. A pretty memorable sequence, I have to say, where the denizens of hell emerge from the building. And apparently for this sequence, actual people with deformities were hired to play these demons, which is like, I mean, like, I guess, is that insensitive? Is that like in poor taste? It gave them work, I guess. Like, I mean, like, what else? Like, yeah, you're gonna be playing a horrific demon. Because, like, you're watching it, you're like, oh, wow, that doesn't look like prosthetics. That looks like someone... That looks like a person, like a real person. Some of it is prosthetic, but a lot of it is like, oh, yeah, no, that's a person with some kind of deformity. Is that the polite way to say it. That's what they have, you know? And they're all like, so she's like running up she's running up the stairs trying to escape them. And there's just more on the way. And no one's really trying to hurt her. They can't really affect her. Only she can affect herself. She ends up getting to the top of the building. And Burgess Meredith hands her a knife. And he's like, do it. Do it. Yes. And then all of a sudden, it's the priest. And he's and the other priest who she met earlier. And they're there. Oh yeah, so there's this like twist thing where she hides in her apartment at first. And her boyfriend comes out, and you're like, didn't he just get whacked? And he tells her, he just explains the plot to her about like how the Sentinel thing exists and all that, and then he's like, yeah, I tried to, oh yeah, I forgot. He tried to, yes, he tried, no, I mentioned that. He's like, I tried to strangle the priest upstairs. And then I got killed. Someone smashed my head in. And I've gone to hell because I actually killed my ex-wives. You're like, okay, I guess that was a real thing then? They could have, like... I mean, I feel like you maybe could have skipped that. You could have, like, left out all the intrigue, quote-unquote intrigue, about his ex-wives' deaths. And just been like, yeah, he went to hell because he tried to kill the priest. Like, I would have accepted that. But no, they had to add in this whole subplot that didn't really amount to much. Anyway. So he's part of the denizens of hell now. And at the last minute, the priest saves her. And she becomes the new Sentinel. Which is a bit of a... Is it a dour ending? I mean, it keeps the denizens of hell from spilling out onto Earth, so that's something. That's something, I guess. Overall, a strange movie. Interesting in a lot of ways. Very 70s. She's wearing some big-ass bell-bottom jeans. It's very epic. There's a lot of things about it that are neat. The book is probably cool. The film, it mainly falls short in being a little bit boring. Being a little, I don't know, it doesn't flow very well. Which means that whatever atmosphere it could have had, it could have been a lot better than it ends up being. Because a lot of the atmosphere gets lost due to the weird kind of sudden scene shift. It's not even a tone shift, it's just scene transitions. It's very it feels a little disjointed. You have to fill in a lot of events in between, like what's going on and what happened in between these two scenes. There's a lot of time spent that I kind of glossed over of Christina Rains is feeling funky, and then something happens, and then that's a little weird, and then she feels funky again, and then something happens. She's having funky wonky little dreams. Seems like a poor adaptation of a interesting book. And apparently, dude, the IMDb trivia for this is hilarious. Let me go look up the trivia real quick, because I was reading through it. Jeff Goldblum was dubbed in all but one scene. Apparently Christina Rains... Oh yeah, so that's the other problem. She does not give a good performance in this film. There aren't many good performances. I think the best one is probably Burgess Meredith, who's like the weird neighbor, who's sort of the leader. He's sort of the main key guy in the film. Villain, I suppose. The boyfriend is okay. Everyone else is either like just a little meh, or they have nothing to do. Christina Rains clearly does not want to be there, and apparently hated the director. Let's see. Christina later said this may not have been for the best, however, as she didn't like Winner, the director, Michael Winner, his maddening approach to directing. The actress says she cried every day on her way to work and admitted in a recent interview that she never has never watched the film due to the treatment she received on set. So fun. Yeah, so the just there's a really funny quote here from, I guess, the director's. Yeah, okay. Michael Winner says in his biography that some unions supported several crew members who refused to take their meal with the deformed people hired by the production and even demand a separate catering tent. Winner said he was full of shame because of this disgusting behavior. Yet in the Blu-ray commentary, he said he intended to eat with the deformed people in protest, but ended up not doing so because it was so hot outside that day. I have so much compassion for these people who have been shunned by society because of the way that they were born. I'm not going to eat with them because it's too hot. They can go suffer outside in the heat. Oh yeah, the original author also hated Winner. Jeffrey Convitt says Winner went from subtle and scary to unsubtle and gross. Oh yeah, Jeffrey Convitt's he's the author, claims that the casting of an ensemble of older stars, Burgess Meredith, Ava Gardner, John Carradine, etc., was a Universal Studios decision, since they had success with an ensemble in the movie Airport. So that's weird. It's like Airport came out and they were like, let's do that. Let's just do that again. It worked with Airport. Jeffrey Convitt claimed director Michael Winner's response to most of his criticisms were, "Stop worrying about it, go find some girls." Jeffrey Convitt, the author of the book, is like, I really didn't like how you adapted my book. I think you did a really bad job of it. And he said, I think you need to go Sentinel some pussy, dude. I think you need to go find some who get laid, Jeffrey Convitts. Yeah, just super funny. The film debut of Tom Berenger. He appears at the very end of the movie with him and his character's girlfriend. Sorry, him and his character. His girlfriend, they appear at the apartment and they're gonna be the next in line. They're gonna be one of them's gonna be the next Sentinel. Richard Dreyfuss has a random brief cameo. Again, just so many weird random actors in this movie. For this, like, it's trying to be, it probably could have been as good as like an Exorcist type movie, but was not meant to be because of one funny guy.